The focus of tonight is getting you ready for this camp. And I know I saw the survey that came in on what level of experience everyone has with three-person officiating. And I will say that it varies, which we expected. And tonight it's meant to give you some tips. We have 10 areas of focus. And it'll take us a little while to get through these because I want to make it a little bit engaging as well. So, and I have some little snap poll challenges. I want to stay engaged. This is all about, it's a small enough group. We can come off mute and kind of talk through some things. And I want to prepare you for one thing at the end. So at the end of this call tonight, before you hang up and leave here, what I'm going to ask you to do is one thing. It's actually three things. I'm going to ask you to share with me, okay, what are three things that you're going to work on Saturday? Now, for some of you that are maybe on this call and not working this weekend and in the camp, I think there might be a handful. You know, the next time you're on the court, what are three things that you learned tonight? And my recommendation is you have a pen and paper out or a notebook or whatever you're going to take with you to the camp. And just as you hear things that are important and you say like, wow, I didn't know that, or wow, that's a great idea, write it down. Because at the end, you can go back through those notes and kind of cull through them a little bit and pull up the top three. Not to say you can't work on more than three, but what are the top three things that you want to really focus on? And you'll share that with your observers this weekend because you want them to be looking for those things as well. And especially if you're new, it could be some very basic things. If you're more advanced, maybe it's a little more something advanced, right? Okay, so before we hang up the call, you all promised me we're going to put in the chat window here, what are those three things? Start off with a poll here. So think about this for a second. I'm going to pop this. This will be our first one. We're going to do a bunch of these. Okay. So I'm going to launch the poll here. So A, B, or C, what year do you think three-person basketball officiating crews were first designed for high school? A, B, or C? Go ahead, weigh in. We're going to do a bunch of these. So get ready to weigh in. All right. All right. 5 more seconds here. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Here's what you all said. You said, majority of you said 63% said C, 1978. Well, that would probably be right now. Probably remembers that because I think that's when the NBA went to 3. Believe it or not, there's references to all 3 of those in three-person officiating. That even in 1895, there's references, this came from Referee Magazine, that there's references of a 3-person crew in high school. And like, wow. And I think Dan, I think you were a cadet back then, maybe. I kind of don't recall what class you were in, but that is fascinating to me that we've actually go back that far. So when we think about 3 versus 2-person crews, the question is why, right? And we know schools kind of don't like to pay for 3 officials, but when we really think of the benefits, and there's been a bunch of studies that have been done, several key ones. We know that if we're in a 3-person crew, we have better court and line coverage. We as an officiating crew actually officiate the game better. Now, coaches might not agree with that, but hey, that's what it is, right? One of the reasons is we have less blind spots. We know that in a 2-person crew, we have several blind spots, especially on our backside, especially up by the division line, not so good. And that's in the 3-person crew, we get that backside support. We'll talk about that later when we're kind of diagramming things out a little bit. And of course, more importantly, is we have an extra set of eyes that when we have matchups on the court, we have more eyes to look at things going on. Now, coaches might say, well, yeah, more eyes, more fouls. But studies show that fouls there's no significant difference between 2-person and 3-person crews. And they did those surveys at the studies at the NCAA level. The other big one is, hey, for folks that are getting a little older, maybe not quite as in shape, 3-person game is definitely easier to work. It's a little less intense. And so if you're a little less fit, you usually can keep up with it. You can officiate a lot longer. And as I said, there's no negative impact on the game for 3-person crew. And right now, 3-person crews are the gold standard. It is for any competitive level game. And many of our conferences throughout the state are using 3-person crew for those good conference matchups. But unfortunately, we have a lot of schools that either can't afford it or have decided they're going to stay with 2-person. So the challenge is for all of us on this call, I'd say pretty much everyone is going to bounce back and forth between 2-person and 3-person. So we need to know 2 different systems of operation when it comes to being on the court and officiating. So let's get into, I have 10 things we're going to focus on. We're going to dive into each one and going to open it up for questions. But the first thing is, let's focus on the big picture around 3-person officiating. And I call it the floating triangle. By the way, a lot of these things are my opinion, right? Some things are not in the books and things like that, but through years, this is my 45th year of officiating, I think, something like that, some crazy number. I started when I was 5, and it's definitely a learning process. But what we've learned about 3-person officiating crews is that we have this triangle concept. Of course, you can't have a triangle in a 2-person crew because there'd be only 2 corners. In a 3-person crew, we can create this triangle effect that kind of floats across the court, up and down, back and forth, that really gives us great coverage. And that's the big, big difference, is we get so much better coverage. And when we think about this triangle has to move with the flow, back and forth, up and down. And we tend to run a little bit less, but it gives us an opportunity to really see the floor. Now, when it comes to awareness of the court, we still need to know where the ball is, right? And that's important. Just like we are in a 2-person crew, we need to have keen awareness where the ball is. We need to know where the matchups are, and we need to know where our partners are. Where it was a little bit easier in a 2-person crew because we could literally be looking right at our partner. Now we have someone that's kind of usually a little bit out of the picture sometimes. So we just have to have this awareness where everybody is. And there's a bunch of other stuff that we have to be aware of, right? Think about all the things that happen in a game. We have the table, the coaches, the spectators. There's just a lot of things we have to be aware of, but at least it gives us another set of eyes to drive that awareness. And when we talk about that triangle, we think about expanding it out. Notice there's 3 officials here on this chart, but notice how wide they are, because that triangle can expand itself based on where the players are, where the matchups are, where we see activity on the court. And that concept is the same as a 2-person crew, where we always want to box into play the best we can. So it gives us the ability to expand that out. Okay. So this is probably the most important picture that I'm going to show you all night. And I will say that anyone who's worked in any of my training programs or cadet classes or mentoring programs, routinely I would walk up to someone as they're learning 3-person officiating and have a blank piece of paper, and I would draw the outline of a half court with a little bit of a lane in there. Say, show me the primary coverage areas of each one of the officials in a 3-person crew. And I expect that anyone who officiates a 3-person game should be able to represent this diagram exactly the way it's shown here. that you could draw the little area that the lead is covering. And I'll put my laser pointer on just to get this going here. So notice the leads area, you should be able to draw a line down the middle of the lane area, which is called the basket line. The line that goes from basket to basket is called the basket line. Everyone on this call, by the weekend, I would challenge our observers to ask our campers this: draw this diagram, and that you can accurately represent. And notice that the leads area is covering a much smaller area than we typically have in a two-person. I'll show you that diagram in a second. Notice the trail is across the basket line, but also dips down into the corner. And notice the center, which is our third official that we add in the mix when we have three-person crew, reaches across to the basket line. So what's interesting when you look at this, it's easy to say that the lead has a much smaller area, but a very important area, obviously, because a lot of plays are here. But notice that the center shares the lane area with the lead official. That's an important concept. Very hard as we start to officiate three-person crew to realize that as the lead, a lot of times you have to lay off of plays that are not in your area, which happen to be on the other side of the basket line. So that's a teaching point right there. When you're first starting to do three-person, can you stay focused in your primary coverage area? So lead, trail, center, your primary coverage area is this area that's colored for the lead official. It's green here. And notice it stops at the arc of the three-point arc. And notice the trail extends across a little bit further. So drawing this accurately is super important. And notice the line coverages, right? And we'll talk about line coverages a little bit later, but the center has their line, the lead has their line, the trail has their line, the division line, and all lines in the backcourt. So the trail has a lot of lines in the scope of responsibility. The center only has one line, but we do, if we think of other lines that are on the court, we also need to think of our three-point responsibilities. So notice how the center, it's cut off right here. The center has less responsibility for a three-point try. Of course, notice the lead. Now, this is, I'm pretty sure, different from college. My college officials could mention. The lead in high school, National Federation IAABO mechanics, does not have responsibility for a three-point shooter in the corner. The trail does, looks down here. The trail has all the arc all the way across. So one of the things I talk about in a pregame, and I know Barry and Al do, is that when we have two officials and there's a try for goal up near the top of the arc, and both officials raise their hand for a three-point try, we always say the center should drop your hand, because most likely, unless it's really on their side, it was a mistake by the center to put their hand up. So it's important to learn where are your responsibilities, because we don't need two officials looking at a jump shooter out here when it's really in the trails area. Or we don't need the lead to be looking out here in the corner if it's really the trails. So I think you get my point, is that if someone hands you a blank piece of paper, you should be able to draw this pretty easily. Now, when we compare this, we talked about sideline, end line, right? So we mentioned those already. Look at the difference between 2 and 3 person. Somebody come off mute and tell me, what do you notice? What do you like better? And what is possibly worse about this? Somebody come off and tell me.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
So on the 2-man, you're sharing the space between the 3-point arc into the hole when it's shaded in that dotted point.
Yeah.
And with a 3-man, you're not sharing at all any space. You're just looking at your primary area unless you have to. I like the way that 3-man works because you have less work to like actually look at, and you can look at a primary space and get less error. As far as 2-man, you have more error since it's two people and you're like moving around more so to get that exact angle.
I love that. That's a great point of view. Thank you. That's Oksana, right?
Yes.
That's a great point of view. Look at the size that the lead has to cover, right? And you know, we talked about corner shooters. The lead has to take that corner shooter, has to stay there, and now everything's left for the trail. So what else do you, someone else tell me, what do you like? What do you see already that you like about 3-person? How about some of our college officials? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's a smaller primary coverage area, or it's more focused. Whereas, and especially if you're doing a high level 2-man game, it's harder to cover those whole areas.
Super hard. Holy cow. For those veterans that are on the call that remember working like super intense rivalries as a 2-person crew, you'd walk out of that gym and you would feel like, I don't know if I did a good job because we worked so hard and so much stuff happened. I don't know if we got it all. I don't know if we called a fair game, right?
Meeting the goal, Billy, meeting the goal of observing the closest competitive matchup. There are simply too many competitive matchups for 2 people at a high level game.
Totally, Joe. Yeah, there's way too much stuff. Too many competitive matchups for 2 people to watch. 4 eyes, 2 sets of eyes watching all that. Very tough. So I think we're all convinced that this is our better coverage. And hold on one second here. I hear some. Make sure you guys are muted there. I do hear some background noise if you don't mind.
I was going to add one thing. I came off mute. I think in a 3-man, it's easier to get back on a fast break. Let's face it, we're older than the players, so it's easier to get back on a fast break with 3-man compared to 2-man.
Okay, I'll go with you on that. And I would say that you might be less tired because you're doing a lot less running too. Hopefully, I would hope that your 2-person position as a trail and your 3-person position as a trail is very similar. But I agree with you. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
It's similar in 2-man. You also got to worry about someone coming up to sideline behind you. Now you got 2 other officials covering your backside.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. So good stuff. So let's dive into this a little bit more. There's just one other concept. When we talk about that triangle moving, there's another thing we want to make sure we know. One of the things that we want to focus on when we're working in a 3-person crew is that we keep the triangle kind of tight. Tight meaning that it doesn't get so spread out. And whenever there's action or a try for goal, you know, the lead can take a step down, the trail can take a step down, the C can step down one way or the other. And we'll get into that. We talk specifically about the C, but it gives you that opportunity to kind of keep that triangle tight and move to improve. And one of the things that I always talk about is this construct of angle, distance, and time, ADT, like the alarm company, right? If you had a choice, it's better to get a good angle than be too close to the play or too far from the play. Like, get your angle first. That's why we move to improve. We want to make sure that we get that clear shot. And as an example, like if the center official needs to step down to look through this play, get the angle first, then worry about your distance. And obviously getting there on time is super important. That would be it is important, but not quite as important as getting the angle first. Then focus your distance and get there on time. So they're great concepts to think of when we keep the triangle tight. As much as the triangle can expand, it can also stay nice and tight and stay like kind of connected.
Hey, Billy,
Yeah.
it's Stan. And for the benefit of everyone here, I don't want to chime in, but are you, if we talk about in this situation, are you prepared to discuss a little bit about the reffing a little in this when as you've got a back foot as the trail?
Yeah, wait till we get to that. We got a whole section on that. Is that okay? Do you mind?
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. And let's talk about that when we get there. You're perfect, spot on. So, all right, I got another challenge for you here. All right. So, let me launch our poll again. So here's a question for you. What position is responsible for ruling on a last second try or a buzzer beater, as it's more formally called? Always a trail official, always opposite table, always closest to the clock. What do you think? Weigh in. Always trail, always opposite the table, always closest to clock. What do you think? Okay. Keep going. I see we're split on this a little bit. So 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. And here's what you all said. You said 21% of you said always the trail, and 75% said always opposite the table, and one person said close to the clock. The correct answer is always opposite the table. That's a difference between 2-person and 3-person crews. And guess what? That would be something you would talk about in your pregame conference with your crew, that we always have the person opposite the table that is in usually a trail or center position, right? So it's not always the trail, because it could be the center, but it's always someone that's opposite the table. Okay. So just something to remember in that regard. So let's go on to number 2, focus area number 2. First one was the triangle, right? The floating triangle. This one is one of Al's favorite stuff, officiating competitive matchups. And Al, maybe I'll ask you to come off mute. Why is this so important in a 3-person crew? I guess for every crew, but why do we always talk about competitive matchups? And a competitive matchup is when 2 players are going for position for either one of 2 things: the floor spot on the floor, or they're going for the ball, right? You have a defender on a ball handler or someone holding the ball. So Al, why is it so important, do you think?
Well, one, if you don't referee competitive matchups hard, and then you have 2 types of competitive matchups. You have competitive matchups, then you have engaged matchups. If you don't referee these hard, or you're aware of them, you could lose control of the game by just missing one call, like something off the ball. It can happen. You just got to be aware of it. And also, 2 is these matchups will change during the game when there's substitutions. They kind of go hand in hand. And you have to be very aware of this because every time there's a substitution and there's a matchup change, it's going to change the personality of your game. Because every game you referee this Saturday will have its own personality. And you'll figure it out. And that's why matchups are so important to recognize and officiate.
Yeah, thanks, Al. And I've heard Al speak before, and the beauty of the 3-person crew is that when you have a competitive matchup that's off the ball, like 24 here on the left, like this could be on the kind of away from the ball, the girls posting up. The good thing is you have someone there watching that very, active matchup happening, that's a great thing. In a 2-person game, we might miss that. As Al said, if you miss a really critical call, that game can slip away from you, which is no fun. So the second thing is be very aware of when you have these competitive and engaged matchups, and be aware of them and pay attention to them. And don't get yourself caught watching the ball. Stay focused in your primary and look for competitive matchups, right? All right, here's another challenge. Let me launch the poll again. So this one says, relaunch a poll here. If two officials rule a foul, double whistle, which one, now they're in a 3-person crew, which one should take responsibility for the play? The first official to blow the whistle, the official closest to the play, who has the best look, or the official that's in their PCA? Which one would most likely should take the responsibility for that play? So weigh in now. Go ahead. First one to blow, closest to the play, a la best look, or the official that's in their PCA? All right, 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, you all said, boom. You all said 83% of you said C, official that's in their PCA. And we could debate this a little bit, but pretty much that's kind of the book answer, right? So, however, hey, let me ask Barry to come off mute. Barry, I don't know if you can come off mute or not. You there, Barry? So I put him on the spot.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So look, you and I are in a game. We have a double whistle. How would we have talked about handling that maybe before the game?
Well, we would talk about play situation. Is it a fast break? Is it drive to the basket? Lead official. We talk about lead officials coverage area, a drive to the basket from the center side. We would talk and say, if you have a double whistle, we'll defer to the center because it originated from their side. If it originates from the center side, you allow the center to take that, or it originates from the trail side, you'd allow lead to take that play.
Yeah,
then you got to talk about the pass and the crash too. You'd have to talk about that too.
Yes, and there's some really good diagrams in the manual that talk about all these, because we're not going to go into all those tonight. But Bear, so we would probably say, look, if it's in your primary, you get first crack at it. We kind of use those words a lot of times, right? And especially if it's coming to the lead, a lot of times in the leads area, let the lead take first crack at it. If it's a C coming from the C's area in the C's primary, but it's possible, Barry, right? You and I might come together. I'm going to say, hey, Barry, I had a really good look at that. It's possible you might give it up to me, right? If we talked about it before we reported it to the table.
If you're on my crew and it's coming from the center side, I'm giving you first shot at that play.
That's right.
I'm allowing you to take that play. If you don't have a whistle, then if we have a foul, I'm taking it. But if we have a double whistle, I'm allowing you as the center official to take that play because it originated from your part of the court, your primary coverage area.
That's right. That's right. And so it's a lot of communication. Again, you have think about this now. You have another whistle on the court that potentially could go off. And maybe they're not the best official in a 3-person crew and they're reaching out of their area into your area. Now what happens, right? So you have to have communication and you have to talk about what happens if we have a double or even a triple whistle. How are we going to handle that? And one of the best things you'll learn as you do more of these types of games is try to avoid being super quick with your mechanics and try to avoid giving a signal really quick, like a block, charge, travel, whatever. If you see your partner with their hand up or whether it's fist closed or hand open, right? Get that eye contact and use our normal 2-person crew technique because we want to come together and make sure that the right person is making that ruling. So,
Billy, can I chime in real quick?
Yeah.
That is a great point you just made, because if you give a signal and give the primary or the preliminary call, either official, then you have a blarge, and that's the worst thing to possibly have. So stopping the clock and making sure that you have eye contact with whoever made the call, and then going to the proper procedure is very important.
100%. 100%. Thanks,
And
Pat.
Billy, it's very important for the center official just to blow and hold and be patient, because that's where the trouble, like Pat just said, that's where the trouble is when the center reacts too quick and the lead's blowing too. So you need to be very, very patient as a center official.
That's right. That's right.
And it
Very
also
patient.
comes back to what you talked about in the triangle. You need to know where your partners are all the time. This is the key right here to where you need to know where your partners are.
Yeah. Now, the beauty is it'll be kind of fun if you had a double whistle in your camp, because you get to work through that in a kind of a friendly environment before the coaches go crazy. So if you do, don't panic. Just try to avoid signaling and come together and talk about, okay, well, that was in my primary. I had a really good look at it. I'm going to take it, right? Okay. All right. Wait, someone's on. Mike, that's you. There you go. Thank you. All right, our third piece. We got to get the game started. How the heck do we do that as a 3-person crew? Holy cow, we got an extra person. What do we do? Let's get off on the right, well, or left foot. Depends on what we do here. So let's talk about getting the game started. Okay. So our setup position is always the same. Always the same. You see, we have a referee who will obviously toss the ball. U1 is our table side official. Notice that's on the table side over here, U1. And notice U1 is slightly, if you're facing the court, to the right of the table. So like they're standing here, they move to their right. Obviously facing the table to their left, but they're in this position always. Never over here, always over here. Okay? And U2 is on the opposite side of the table and the court on this side. This is your starting position for sure. Now, obviously the players can line up wherever the heck they want besides the two jumpers. Now, what should we be thinking about when we're lined up here, thinking like, well, where do I go when the ball is tapped? Okay. Well, the first thing U1 table side should be thinking is, and remember these words, because I still to this day say this every time. This is exactly what I say in my head. Right lead, left center. I say it like 3 times, right lead, left center. And then I'll even say right, I'll connect right to blue. Left is white. Right lead is blue, left center is white. So reminds me, like if blue gets the ball, I'm going to the right because they're going to my right. Notice right is, this is my right hand here. So that means it's this way down here. We're looking at it backwards, but to the U1, that's to their right is that way. And then U2 saying the same thing, but on the other side of the court. Right lead, left center. Right to this person is this way, right? Right lead, left center. So if you remember those 4 words, you'll never get messed up, sort of. I can tell you how you get messed up in a minute. But what does the tosser do? The referee who's tossing the ball? Easy. They always go right. You say, well, how could they always go right? Well, because they're last to move, always. U1 and U2 move I'll show you in a second. But once the team is moving in one direction or the other, they face that direction and go right. Show you what I mean. Okay. So in this case, the ball went from the way we're looking at it to the right from our point of view. So the team got possession. They could have tapped it backwards but the team possession is going to our right. Therefore, right lead, left center, U1, it's actually to their left. So left center comes down to the center position. We're going to get into more mechanics of where these positions are. And then same thing here. U2, right lead, left center. It went to the U2's right. So they go lead, right, lead, left, center, right, lead, left, center. And because once these two have started to move, The tosser turns and faces the direction and right to now, because if I'm facing this way, this is to my right. I always go right because I'm filling in. Now let's look at the other side. Same thing. So if I go the other way, the ball transition. Now it could be back tapped, but eventually we're going left, right? And in the same thing now, U1 is saying right lead, left center, right lead, because it was went from my right lead, left, center. Easy. We never get mixed up. And the tosser just turns and faces. And now, because I'm facing this way, this is my right. I've moved to my right and fill in. Easy peasy. I'll pause on that. Does that make sense, everybody? Right lead, left center for U1, U2, and the tosser always goes right. But they're the last to move. Guys hear that before? I know the veterans have, but how about new to 3? Have you heard that before? No?
No, I never heard that.
Okay. So that's
right lead, left center, but
yeah, that's how you remember it, right?
It.
So you plant that in your head right before the tap, and you won't go wrong. Now, what happens if we get twisted up? Here's the poll question. What happens if we get twisted up? Let me launch our poll and see what you guys think here. So, if we get twisted up, like somehow we get all jumbled up and we're not in the right spots, okay? Do we blow the whistle and re-jump? Do we balance the floor best you can? Or does everyone just stop where they are? Everyone freeze. What do you think? A, blow the whistle, re-jump. B, balance the floor best you can. Well, I think you guys are all going for the right answer here. This was obviously a little too easy, but you all said, 100% of you said, balance the floor the best you can. The answer is yes, right? So I'll go back one slide. And if for some reason, let me just stop sharing here. Boom. If for some reason, let's say both officials ran all the way to the lead position for some crazy reason, or maybe they both ran to the center, you kind of look up, and as long as you kind of balance the floor, remember, the tosser is the last person to move. So all the tosser should do is turn and look and try to get some eye contact. And if you're just, as long as eventually you can balance that floor and you get someone in a lead position, someone in the center, someone in the trail, like we're the only ones that know. So just try to balance it out, get reset. Where it can happen is maybe you have a long back tap and U2 goes back with it and then decides to go forward, and U1 gets mixed up and the R goes on the same side as U2. Could be a mess. But as long as you kind of look at one another, take a breath. You don't have to freeze. Don't stop officiating, but just try to balance the floor out the best you can. And it'll work out. It'll all work out. And you guess what? It happens to everybody. It happens, especially if you're not paying attention, right? Let's talk about these positions in detail. I know, Al, I love when Al talks about working the lead. I learned so much from Al years and years ago about working the lead. And one of the best practices of the lead is Al calls it, I'll go back to the title, relax. Now, not relax like you fall asleep, but the lead is a very relaxed position. I always say, I teach our cadets and mentor, tuck your chin, meaning you shouldn't have your head up on a swivel looking at all the stuff that's happening way out on the court, because your primary coverage area is really tight. Al, talk a little bit about that relaxation and weight on your back foot. I know you teach that a lot. How do you teach that?
Well, just everybody, the lead, when you're in the lead, just remember this. The reason when plays are coming at you, you want to be patient. The lead is the patient position. So you want to keep your weight on your back foot. You're going to keep your weight on your back foot because you're accepting the play. Going to keep your weight on the back foot. This one's easier said than done because you want to let plays start, develop, and finish when you're in the lead. And when you're in the lead, if you keep your weight in your back foot, the air will usually go to your stomach, which is good, and you'll be able to relax and you'll see the whole play instead of jumping at plays. Has anybody on the call, there's a play at the lead, there's a good block, and you have a foul? Well, of course, we all have done that. And the reason why is we didn't accept the play. We weren't patient on the play. And we didn't we just jumped at it. And so the lead, weight on the back foot. The reason why it's the patient position, it's the accepting position, which is basically the similar. You're accepting it. It's the start, develop, and finish position. But most of all, you got to keep your ear in your stomach because it's the anxiety position because everyone is coming at you at a high rate of speed. Especially in today's game, everyone plays dribble, drive, penetration. Everyone plays it. So, and that's why the lead is so important. My opinion, I think the lead is the toughest position to work, and in today's game, it's the most important position because of this dribble, drive, penetration concept.
And it's such a small area. It's obviously tiny but important, no doubt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and there it is. And one of the things that's super important is that as the lead, you're scanning your primary because it is tiny, but a lot of things happen in this, as Al said, it's super important. One of the things you can move, notice the lead here is wide, almost as wide as the ball, but not beyond the 3-point arc. Okay. So kind of work in this little area in here. And as you get used to that, we'll talk about rotations in a minute here, but you're going to be ready to close down. We said close down is when this official right here moves into a position that's closer to the lane line extended. The lane line extended, that's when you move down. And that means you're either moving to a good position to see a matchup or the ball, or the ball has transitioned to the other side of the court, and we're going to do a live ball rotation, which we'll talk about in a moment here. Okay. So one of the things you can definitely practice in a camp situation is, as we said, if you go back to that chart I said you're going to draw on a piece of paper for me, avoid as the lead calling fouls across the basket line. Now, if something happens, you have a train wreck in the lane, I always say, if there's a train wreck, car gets run over by a train, there's paperwork. You got to call somebody's got to call something. You can't have 3 officials come up with no air and a whistle and their kids getting plowed over. But one of the things you want to do is trust that official that's on the other side of the court, because now we have someone over here. That ball swings quickly. You have a dribble drive to the basket, and there's a crash on the other side of the basket line. Then you, as the lead, even though you might be coming down and you say, well, I got a good look at that, try to refrain from that. As Barry said, trust your center official to make that call. And that's really important. Super important. So these are some best. So when you're working the lead, think of some of these things that you're out on the court in the camp situation, and, stay in your primary. Your primary is not this corner. It's not a 2-person game. Your primary is inside the small area here. So I got another challenge for you. So let's see. So here's a question for the group. Launch the poll again. How far down the court should a lead official be while a team is advancing the ball from the back court? How far? Even with the ball handler slightly ahead of the farthest players, rotate into position on the end line. What do you guys think? Go ahead, weigh in now. Even with the ball handler slightly ahead of the farthest player, rotated into position on the end line. Okay, 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you said a little split here. So somebody thought even with the ball handler. Now that would be the trail official, not the lead. The 72% of you said slightly ahead of the farthest player. A handful said rotate in position on the end line. One of the things we would not do is, well, you might do that, but most likely you're doing B. And here's why. Let's take a look why that's most likely. So, oh, I thought I had a picture of that. Well, anyway, I don't have a picture of it. Sorry. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be all the way down the end of the court when much of the play is at the other end. Oh, you know what? I have a picture of that in transition. So we'll cover that later. But at the end of the day, you should be slightly ahead of the farthest players. Keep that boxing in principle. That's super important. And you don't need to run all the way down the other end and you have players 20, 30 feet away from you. You know, keep them boxed in. That's what we want. All right, number 5. Let's talk about the trail a little bit. I put the words fight to be tight. Barry, I'm going to have you comment on this because Barry called me out on this, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting older, getting a little lazier on certain things, but he's like, how come you're not working in very tight as a trail? I'm like, I don't know. I never noticed that. And I looked at it on video and darn if he wasn't right, that, you know, one of the best practices as a trail, here's a trail in a pretty interesting position. Very much down, working the 28-foot mark and in that hash mark or where the coaching box starts. You see it up here. It's not on this side, but you know that you're in tight. You're working in. You don't work out near the division line. You don't work out on the outside. Notice you have an inside out look here. Barry, why do you think this is important? And why is the mindset change now where they don't mind you working here, even though you might get beat down the court?
Because they want you to be able to see through the defender and the offensive player. All right. So if he's back where the second S is on that floor and the defender comes up on the offensive player, you can't see through that play. So anything that could happen on the offensive player's right side of his body, you probably can't see. The center's not looking over there because he's got too much other action in the lane area. And they don't worry about getting beat down the floor because the new mindset is referee to play in front of you and we'll worry about the next play next. Because if you get beat, there's somebody coming behind you that can help you out on that play going down the floor.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's that. And look, this is one of the things that your observers will be looking at is when you position yourself as the trail official, are you getting down to that inside or at least even with that 28-foot mark, even if the play's behind you, right? So
and the other thing is we're good to have they didn't like it before 2 centers. They're okay now with the trail being down and we'll sometimes almost be close to 2 center officials. But they want you to referee that play and not miss that play. That everybody sees, but the referee because he's behind the play.
And Barry, that's a great point. If you look at a court diagram, the difference between where the center, we'll talk about the center in a moment, it's very minimal. It's only a few steps. The difference between where the trail sets up, or the trail working area is, and where the center's working area is, it's very, very close. It's not far apart. They just happen to be on opposite sides of the court.
Yeah, we're 15 feet from the basket here for the foul line, but then there's 3 feet under the basket, right? So
yep.
And you're a 28-foot mark here, so that puts that at what, 18? So it's only 10 feet or so.
Yep. And remember in our diagram, if I had to draw my primary coverage area where my red dot's going right now, this is the outer limit of the trail. So the trail has a pretty wide area for closely guarded counts. So you're going to get a lot of closely guarded counts here, and you should be counting if you're closely guarded. Now, they're not closely guarded here, but if they are, you should be counting. And we always say if it starts in your area, you continue the count until they pick up the ball, and then the other official picks up that count. Okay, so you'll have a majority of the closely guarded counts for sure as a trail. In fact, the center probably doesn't have too many, but occasionally. Okay, the other thing we have to be really cognizant of, and this is for the center as well, but the trail has the corner shooters. You have a corner shooter. You have to stay with that shooter all the way up and all the way down. So that play is over, because as we showed you on that diagram before, the lead has no primary responsibility. Now, do they peak? And I know in NCAA men's and women's, I think you do look out there, I believe. But in high school, we give that responsibility to the trail to stay with that corner shooter. Now, not to say you can't peek and help. And what we said before, you have a train wreck in the corner and the trail totally zoned out on it and the lead saw it. Well, I know if Barry's my partner, Al's my partner, they're coming up with a call because they're not going to leave me hanging out here for some reason that I spaced out on that. So this is big one. Work the 28-foot mark and inward. When you're in camp setting, get your butt down here and get set and look and see, then move to improve from there. Instead of like walking from the division line and taking your time, get down and get in position and get set up. Okay.
Billy, can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
A lot of the officials they think they have to break down and get down to the end line. That's the one thing with working this 28-foot mark. If there's transition the other way, you want to get the 90 at foul line extended and then work your way underneath. So you don't have to bust down to get back. You only have to get as far because you have the C across. It's going to be foul line extended for the opposite side too.
Sure. Well, that's
so a lot of referees are cheating to try and thinking they have to get down to the end line, which they don't have to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I when on Saturday, that's what I'll, if I see anybody cheating, that's the first thing I try and go over. It's a double C. I'm looking for a double C. I'm not looking for you to try and get down the other way. I like the fact that you have a double C.
Okay. Well, let's talk about let's stay with the trail for a minute here. What's the best way to describe the orientation of the trail official? Would you describe the trail official as division line oriented? Like that's kind of where they're focused on. They're oriented more around the division line. Would you say they're oriented on the sideline? Or would you say they're oriented around the free throw line extended? What do you think? Weigh in on that. What would be the best way to describe the orientation of the trail official? So, Al, why don't you tell us the answer to this, if you don't mind?
It's B, sideline oriented.
Why is that?
Okay, and let's just talk about that, Billy, because there's been a misinterpretation of it. Is sideline oriented? Everybody means you don't hug the sideline. Means that's where you're going to start, and then you're going to attack on the floor to get your angles. If you are on the floor, if you come up on the floor to attack your angles, okay, you're going to constantly run into stacks. And in this play, to be honest with you, I don't like his position, and I'll tell you why. If he stays sideline oriented, he actually overruns the play, which is dangerous in today's game because now he has lost his big picture mentality. Good luck on trying to help with goaltending and basket interference. He can actually just maybe referee one play. If he's out sideline oriented at the S, he can referee a lot more plays and then attack to get his angles. See, he overran the play. He overran his dependable position. That's very dangerous.
And if you are out here, you're still right around the 28-foot mark. You're still in a good area.
And you see where his head is. He can referee this play. He comes back a little bit, and this is very advanced, everybody. See, in the trail, you want to referee as many players as possible in your area. That's why they say you have to have a big picture mentality. Doesn't mean refereeing all over the floor. And the C over here, he's actually out of position too, because at the C, he should be at the free throw line extended. Okay. If the ball's high, maybe one step low, but he's just a little, that's okay where he's at. And if the ball is low, maybe he's one step high. But he does have a good angle. But if he comes to that second S and he's sideline oriented and he's attacking with his front foot, he can referee a lot more.
Absolutely.
See, right now he can basically just referee a one-on-one matchup. Okay, and it's an unengaged one-on-one matchup. Good luck with trying to referee these two. Yeah, he's close to them, but he's got no angle on them.
Yep.
That's why you got to be very careful of overrunning plays, because just remember, you lose your big picture mentality. And in fact, one college conference did that one year, and everyone came out and says, "What are you guys doing?" You know, you don't want to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
But I like the sideline orient, and the key thing
is he's beautiful on it. He just overran his play. At this point in the game, there's no need right now when they're set up. Look how they're set up. There's no need for 2 C's.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 C's usually happen if there's a rotation and you're stuck there as a C because you got a good angle.
Yep.
And if you're in this position, no problem. Just you're there, good angle. Okay, but you got to say, man, if there's a shot that goes up, I'm going to have to help with that perimeter rebound. Let's say he wouldn't do it, but let's say there was a quick shot. Do you think he has a good look at a perimeter rebound?
Yeah.
The answer is no, he doesn't.
No, not on this side.
Yeah,
well,
and so and you're good, and it's going to happen. But you just gotta remember in the drill, you want to be able to referee as many players as you can, and you want to have a big picture mentality, and that's at any level. So,
yep. And we don't want you officiating from the division line. You need to be up in it.
No. Just remember, you got to get to your 28-foot mark because that's your Fed calls a starting position, or the NBA calls dependable position. It's the same thing. That's just your starting point, and then you're going to attack to get your angles.
Yep.
So the other thing too is if you're ever straight line or stacked or some call it rod, referee offense, defense, that means you're going to have to fight to get an open angle, and so on. And that's where the footwork is very important. Like right now, he's got really good balance in footwork, I just don't like where he's at. That's all.
Yep. Well, so that's the key thing, folks. If you remember, again, you're working on a lot of these are new techniques. It's get down there. But again, we'd also get to the 28-foot mark in a 2-person game as well. So,
the other thing too, Billy, when there's no pressure, everybody, you got to sprint from trail to lead because I'll tell you why you got to sprint from trail to lead. Now there's 2 points. If there's a quick basket and I'm going the other way, I'm going to sprint from trail to lead. A couple of reasons why, because I want to be ready to accept the play. If I don't referee from sprint from trail to lead, I can't referee the last defender, the defender that can hurt me the most, because I'm not on them long enough. Okay. Now, if I get beat, which is going to happen, I don't panic. I'm going to fight for the open look. So if I say, "Oh, I'm beat," which is going to happen on a quick steal, at that point, I'm going to say, "There's no way for me to try to beat them. Let me pull up and finally get my open angle." Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. And that's the same in a 2-person game as well.
Yeah, it's the same thing, but you got to show effort and urgency to go from trail to lead because it just gives a good vibe to everybody. Plus, you'll be better off to accept the play and be patient on the play.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just going along with them, the way the game's played today, you're going to miss a lot of plays to the basket. I'm telling you. Okay.
All right. Well, let's go on to the C. We've been talking about the C. These are my words. It's like riding a horse, meaning once you fall off, you can get back on, right? No, that's not what it means. If you think of it as the free throw line extended. And as Al said, there's kind of a starting point here, right?
Right.
You want to at least get to this spot to start. Now, of course, sometimes the play will dictate other things, but that's kind of our standard. And look at the difference where the trail is. If the trail is in the 28-foot mark
Right.
and there's not much difference between the depth. We just happen to be on the other side of the court here. And so if we think about it, I call it saddle up to the free throw line extended. Like, get there, saddle up to it, and then you're going to decide where you're going to go. And of course, you can take a step down or up if needed, right? We don't need to run all the way down to the end line. We can move to improve. If it's better for this official to take a step down to see through this play, then that's a great position. If it was vice versa, if there was a matchup on this side, they might want to take one step back this way. But in general, you're kind of in that just riding the horse here, which is the free throw line extended. And most important is that you're focusing. Now, let's say the ball was not here. Let's say the ball was on this side. Let's say you have one, maybe not even that engaged of a matchup, just a couple players on this side. They're still in your primary area. So therefore, you're going to watch them. So because they're in your area, you're going to stay focused on those players. Now, one of the things I always say is smell the rotations. We're going to talk about rotations in a second. I feel very uncomfortable in this situation right here. If I'm in the center position and I have a competitive, very aggressive matchup right here, closely guarded, could be, I know this person's going to dribble drive. I might have a secondary defender. I got a lot of stuff going on in my primary right here. This is a recipe for failure. That's why we have 3 officials, because when we have a competitive matchup and we have the ball on one side, we don't want just one official working a ball competitive matchup, a dribbler and a defender, as well as maybe another post-up player. That's where we start to get that movement we're going to talk about here in a second. How do we get the triangle to move? And it's all about smelling. If I was in this position and I'm working with Al and Barry or Amanda and Dan or whomever, Pat, very experienced officials, I know that this lead official is going to come over to help me out, because I'm not going to be left here to officiate all this stuff, and that I should smell the rotation coming. Now, I don't back out of here yet, but I start to see it coming. So before we get into rotations, so the center, we know the area that they cover, and we know that it's primarily a situation where we're working the backside of the lead here, that it's usually not this situation. When we get into a situation when the ball close to me and I have a closely, whenever the center has a closely guarded count, the lead should be thinking, I maybe should be coming over there. That should be a trigger to the lead. The center has a competitive matchup, closely guarded, and that lead should be thinking about coming over. So let's think about it. What happens if you're standing right here where the center official is, and this ball gets tipped away and touches you while you're in that spot? What happens? Because this is a little, could it be a little different here for a 3-person crew, because you're kind of standing on the floor, but while you're standing on the sideline, you're actually on the sideline, but the ball hit you and stayed in play. So A, is it in play? Stays in bounds, no problem. B, out of bounds, if the ball touches the floor only, or is it just out of bounds because it touched the official? What do you think here? A, B, or C? Weigh in. And guess what? This one can happen. It does happen. It does happen. Because especially if you're in that situation where you're close to that play and you haven't been able to move out of there, it can happen. All right, here we go. This is what you thought. A little split on this here, a little split. How about the folks that thought it stayed in bounds? Why do you think that? Who thought that? 10 of you thought that. Somebody tell me why. I'm going to ask the same question to the other group. Why do you think it? Why would it be in play if stayed in bounds? What's your thought process there? Somebody said that. Who said that? Well, I can't tell who said it.
Everybody's scared now, Bill, to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong.
No, I was trying to get off mute. If the ball, I mean, unless the ball touches the line or touches out of bounds, then I said it was inbounds.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I misread the box. The answer box was over top of the question. I missed the standing on the sideline part. But since you're standing on the sideline, you're technically out of bounds, so it's out of bounds.
Okay, I'm going to go with that answer, right? So, yes, the answer is that it's just like a player stepping out of bounds, right? If it hits the official that's standing out of bounds, the ball is out of bounds. And guess what? It can happen here. If you're in bounds, though, what happens? What if you're in play?
Play on.
Play on, right?
Play on. Yep.
Yep. Amanda, go ahead. Tell me you want to hop in there?
Yeah, I'm here to tell you that it has happened. It happened to me this year. I tried to move away from the ball and I moved right into the ball and it hit me and I was like in shock. So I didn't realize I was standing out of bounds. So luckily my partner came in for me and blew it out of bounds because I didn't realize that my feet were actually out of bounds. So it was pretty crazy. So I'm happy he came in for me, but it happens for sure.
It happens. It happens. I think it happens to everyone once or twice in your career. So just be ready for that. If you're out of bounds, you are just like a player. If you're out of bounds, you're out of bounds. If you're in bounds, you're in bounds. So at least you know that now. And that's most likely where it will happen, right? It'll most likely happen when you're in that position. So thanks for sharing that, Amanda. Let's go into number 7. We got 3 more left here. Okay. And let's talk about rotation and switching. When and where do I go?
Mr. Martin, may I interject real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have my hand up. On that item, and not to hold everybody up, but in that situation, and in my situation, what happened to me was I was inbounds. The ball came at me. I caught the ball inbounds. My reaction, well, of course, to protect yourself, right? But the ball came at me to where I caught the ball, and now I'm standing there with the ball in my hands, and everybody froze. What happens then? I drop the ball, or I blow the whistle. Who had last possession? So that's just a question I want to ask. How do we move from that scenario?
I would take a 3-point shot.
Yeah. What do you have, Al, on that? What would happen there?
On that play, if you caught it, it's happened. I've seen it. If you caught it, you have an inadvertent whistle. And if the team still had control, I mean, if it was, a try and it happened, well, there's no team control. So you would have to go with the AP. But if A1 threw a pass, they're still in team control, right, everybody? Because team control has an end, and you actually caught it because it's coming at you. You have an inadvertent whistle, and it's their ball back because they're still a team in control. So
that's exactly what it was. That it was a
pass.
Yeah,
it happens. I've seen it happen. And that's all you did. Say, I have an inadvertent whistle. It's my mistake. And team control. It's team control. The big debate is where do you put it in play? Where you caught it or where they released it? And I would say it's where they released it because that's where they still had team control.
Yeah, like a double. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And this is a great play because this year, if that happened, you would have to put it in one of the 4 spots.
Yeah.
It's an inadvertent whistle.
Yeah.
Well,
let's talk.
That's a good play.
That's a good play, Abby. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's talk about rotations and switching. When and where do I go? Okay. So the key thing is that what we want to know is there's the definition of a rotation versus a switch, okay? So know the difference between those two. So a rotation is movement of the officiating crew during a live ball. So when the ball moves, and we have that important area that we call the basket line, right? What we always want to say is when we have these when we have a strong side or ball side where we have competitive matchups, because typically you're going to have a competitive matchup on the ball side, most likely, then we're going to have 2 officials over there. So 90% of the time or more, the lead will start in a position somewhere on the end line and is going to initiate the movement of the crew so that they get 2 officials onto the side where the ball and our competitive matchups are. And that's where the process of the lead moving across the basket line is what we call rotation. When the lead official goes from point B to point C, that is a complete rotation. Well, it's not complete. It's at least the lead has rotated. Then the other 2 officials must complete the rotation. It's possible that the official might start to go and not complete all the way and come back, which is very possible. Okay. And now, whenever the lead does this, that causes the crew to react and move. And again, 90% of the time, it's up to the lead. If you get in a game and you have lead feet down here and you just come down and you're in a 3-person crew and you just literally never move across the basket line, most likely you're not officiating correctly. I would doubt that you could go through a whole game and never initiate a rotation as a lead. I mean, I guess it's possible, probably highly unlikely, right? So one of the things that we must make sure is that this triangle stays intact. So it's all about eyes. You have to be aware. We said earlier, where are your crew members, right? Everyone's aware, especially if the lead's triggering this motion. And the priority is that we have 2 sets of eyes on the strong or ball side where typically we have matchups. That's important for us. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. So here's an example, right? An example is the official, let's say the ball started here somewhere and A was watching a competitive matchup. Ball was passed out, maybe dribbled over here, has crossed. Now all of a sudden we have more action and ball play and matchups on this side. The lead official closes down to this position. And here is where you decide, am I going or am I not going? Okay. Because we have to decide. And what we're thinking of is when to move. Well, when I should move is, I say always, always, always. If the ball is on that side, okay, if the ball is in the front court, meaning it's not in the back court, the ball is in the front court, you should always be thinking as a lead official, especially in a camp, especially if you're getting observed by people and they're writing down things. Because one of the things you'll write down is like, you were in the lead and there was 3 opportunities you had to rotate and you didn't. Because you should always err on the side of rotating more while you're learning in a camp situation. A lot of times we call first pass rotation, FPR. First pass rotation is if the ball comes and they pass to the side on this side and you were on this side, immediately you rotate to that side. And if you watch college games, they do it all the time because most likely they're setting up a play on that side. They just brought it down this side. Now, if the team creates a strong or ball side oriented offense, you might as soon as they get over there, you're going to go, right? When do you not move? So let's compare it to, so if you know when to move, it's all about when that ball is on the other side of the basket line where you are as a lead. But it's just as important to know when not to move, right? So if you're always going to move, you got to say, well, always, when's the not part? When not to move is when the ball's in the backcourt. The ball's coming up the other side in the backcourt, you would not go over there, okay? Until the ball's in the front court and it establishes front court status and creates that mechanism where the ball is on the opposite side as the lead. And so the other time you don't move, if they come down your side, what a beautiful thing. If the team dribbles down this side and they just, this is the side they're on. Well, why would you move? You're there. It's perfect, right? And then there's these things called the 3 immediates. It sounds like the 3 amigos, but a little different. The 3 immediates is anytime you're thinking that you're going to move and something happens like In this case, there's a pass, and then there's a quick try for goal. So if there's an immediate pass, if there's an immediate dribble drive to the basket, if there's an immediate try for goal, you stay where you are. And there's logical reason for that. Because if you move during any of those immediates, most likely your partners are not going to pick up that rotation, and now everybody's jumbled up. So if you feel like you're going to move, and let's say the ball got passed to this side, and you're like, wow, I got to get over there, and you close down a little bit, and then the ball's immediately passed back, you would say, well, I don't have to move. Okay, I don't have to move now. Or if it's immediate, it's thrown over here, and now there's an immediate try for goal. Whoop, no need to move. You have a center official has that play. Or if the pass and the immediate dribble drive to basket, you don't need to move. They're your 3 times you don't move. Every other time you want to get there. And basically and this is the hardest thing for new officials, is judging when to rotate. And I say to you, going to a camp, and Barry and Amanda and everybody, I hope you agree that it's better to rotate more in a practice than it, right? Al, do you agree?
Definitely, especially if you haven't done it before. It's better to go out and make some bad rotation. Go, oh, I didn't need to do that. Oh, now I know what they're talking about. Because when you go out this Saturday, this is where you want to make mistakes, because that's how you're going to get better. You know, and by the way, everybody who's on this call, everyone's made bad rotations. I mean, any game you watch, there's bad rotations, and you have to say to yourself, oh, I should have rotated on that. That's okay.
It's okay.
But Al, can I ask a question in a veteran sense? I know we're planning for people to be observed, but the game has evolved, and you obviously have seen it evolve from a big person post play to a lot more of a skip pass, 3-point, pass it out, working out, in and out. Doesn't that make some impact on how you're gauging the game you're working?
Definitely.
How quickly the ball is moving now?
Yeah, definitely. And a great point. It also could change at each end of the floor. I could be moving the ball real quick, and then you could be, do you know what I'm saying? You could be doing it differently up the floor.
Yeah.
So you got to know your player person. There's a lot to it, knowing your player personnel. Billy, can we go back to that? I just want to add 2 things. When we say immediate pass, let's just add this: immediate swing pass or immediate entry pass. Because if there's let's say I'm the lead and there's an entry pass right in that block, don't rotate everybody, because 90% of the time they're going to curl right to you. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What I see a lot at all levels, an official will rotate, they curl right to them, and no one can referee the play.
Because they're straight lined, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Good point. So, knowing there's another situation we need to talk about, which is a center initiated rotation, maybe 5% of the time, or maybe a little bit, it just depends on the game, right? There's a situation where you have ball pressure, right? There's ball pressure here. The C's position is here. The normal position, C, starting position, starting position, starting position. So who's best to referee ball pressure behind the C? We don't like the C to just turn and look back here. We like, and the mechanics are to go back and officiate that play and get your good open look here. And by doing that, you don't have to wait for this person to come over. You can initiate the rotation if you have ball pressure behind you as the center. Come back and look at it. And now the lead should smell that. Never leave your center hanging back here. And you should initiate that rotation. And now trail comes down to center, right? So it gets everybody moving, and go back and officiate that matchup. and it starts with that live ball rotation, right? So that happens. That'll happen. If you feel that happening, just go back and get it. And the lead, you should see that. You're like, wow, especially if you're looking diagonal across the play, most likely you're in the wrong spot as a lead, right? The lead should be looking at stuff this way, not that way, right? All right, here's a couple things. Switching is different than rotations. Rotations are live ball. Switching is dead ball. It's when we move when the ball is dead and we're changing positions. And there's so many things. I'm going to have to just say, you have to look in the manual, but it happens after fouls, reporting. It happens on inbound plays. A lot of times it happens after timeouts. It's not nearly as important as live ball rotations. More important is being in position when the ball is live than messing something up or just literally just not switching properly when the ball is dead. Jeff mentioned this to the crew earlier. In 2023 and 24 going forward, and Dan Stefankos will be happy because now he'll finally be on the proper side of the court.
Easy.
You're going to stay table side after you report. So that's a switch. We always just go opposite, right? Now we're going to stay table side. And so in that case, when I don't have any pictures on here, but if you report, you will stay closest to the table, whatever position that you're going to fill, trail or center. Just depends on where the ball is going to be triggered. And one of the things that we talk about is that whenever we inbound the ball, just remember, whenever we inbound the ball, we always have two people on that side. Never going to inbound the ball with just one person on the sideline or on the end line. If the ball is inbounded on this side of the end line, then we must have, the lead will come over and inbound it. And then we'll have, if there was a person in the center position, they will slide back to the trail. This person will slide down. We have a dead ball switch. It's kind of like looks like a rotation, but it's really switching while the ball is dead. So,
hey, Billy, I have a question, and
yes.
You'll probably, maybe I'm ahead of you, but you'll probably get into it. Go back to that spot, and let's say, like, I'm the center there, right, on that sideline where you just were on table side.
Table side, okay.
Yeah. Blue's going to our left. Ball goes out of bounds, right? Center raises his arm, signals the other way, right? The lead comes up, and now the lead's going to administer that throw in, and the center is going to go to trail automatically, correct?
Well, you're saying it right, but it's the wrong term. The new trail will handle the throwing because we're going this way, right?
Right. The new trail will handle the throw in, and the old center will become the
new lead. Because what we said was there always will be two people on any time we trigger the ball, wherever they are in the basket line, end line, sideline, we'll always have two officials on that side. Whenever the ball on an inbounds play dictates the strong side automatically. So we align ourselves to that. We assume that that's the strong side. Good question. Yep.
Okay.
Question.
Hey, Billy, Dan again, and either you or Al can please weigh in on this. But Tierra Brown had a question regarding who waves in the subs during play stoppage, and I think that would be a great.
I got that question coming up. Hold on, that's a quiz question. Hold on. Let's answer that in a minute. I know it's coming up, so table that one. Guaranteed I'm going to answer that for you if you don't mind. So let's talk about this. You look up and there's two lead officials in position on the end line. What should the crew do? If you look up and there's two officials, and let's say the ball's live, like stuff's going on. I know it would be easy to do if the ball's dead, but what we do if it's live? Stay still and fix the next transition, eye contact, one lead move to center, blow whistle, reset positions. What do you think? 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, you got it all right. You all guessed the correct answer, which is get eye contact, and one of those leads should move to the center, right? So remember, we said, don't panic. It's going to happen. It happens to everybody. Just relax and look up and see where are we missing someone, and just little eye contact, little wave your hand, say, Amanda over there, whatever, right? And just kind of move to it. And it's easy. Don't worry about it, because you're still officiating during that whole process. Don't stop officiating, but you can fix the problem for sure. Okay. Let's talk about throw-ins and free throws and a few things. So just a reminder, right? So the trail has most of throw-in responsibilities on sidelines, backcourt, of course, has the division line as well. And the lead has this end line and the sideline to the free throw line extended. Okay. So let's talk about that. What do? Throw-ins on a sideline. Notice never, ever will the center inbound the ball on the sideline. Ever. Center never inbounds the ball. Now you'll say, like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, you might have been the center, but because now we have an inbound play, you now automatically become the trail. Whenever the center is about to inbound the ball, they automatically become the trail. One way or the other. Even though they might have been standing here and the ball went out over here, they're now going to move back to trail because the lead is going to come over, and we put 2 people on that side, okay? 2 people. We call it doubling the line. There's always 2 officials on every line when we inbound the ball. Actually has some other meanings, double line, but not to get into the advanced stuff here. But the other thing that's important is that you handle your lines. So you blow your line, like, because if you are standing, if you're the trail and the lead is over here, the trail has the line all the way down to the end line. But when we talk about administering, this is what this block means. It means administering the trail. You have your entire line, but when we administer, we have the ability to bounce the ball. Don't forget, we always encourage bouncing the ball. And a couple things. When the lead administers the ball for a throw-in on the end line, and we're going to stay in this direction, we're going this direction, the trail mirrors the chop. When the lead administers a throw-in on the end line, the trail mirrors the chop. And that is anywhere on the end line, right? If the ball is to be inbounded from the free throw line extended down, okay, then what we say is we allow the lead to bounce it, just like we do in a 2-person game. We allow the lead to bounce it, but the trail, has to count and chop. So, but they're not mirroring, because actually the lead does not even chop, because it's the trail's line, but the lead is kind of helping out on it here. So we don't have to have the trail come all the way down here to administer a throw, and the trail can stay out here and allow the lead to bounce it and count and chop. Okay. Does that make sense, everyone? That's a little hard thing. And you know what? We'll work through that with you. If you mess that up, not a big deal, because that'll take a little getting used to, that one. But they're the 2 things. But basically, whenever the lead is administering the ball, you're chopping at least. You're either mirroring or you are the chopper. And if they're bouncing it on the sideline, you're the chopper and the counter for sure. Chopper and counter. Okay. So throw-ins, this is new for this year, the designated front court throw-in spots. Probably read about it a little bit. Whenever a defensive team commits a violation, there's a common foul prior to the bonus, or the ball becomes dead for some reason, like those examples we talked about earlier. We have these 4 spots, and you move it to the closest spot for that. And you just take your I should have had a nice diagram of that, but if it's inside the arc and the top of the lane area here, to bring it to one of these two spots, whatever side of the basket line's on. If it's outside, you bring it here. And that's just makes it a little bit easier for throwing. If they step out of bounds, the defense steps out of bounds and the offensive team is going to inbound it. Now staying in this direction, you put it in the spot where, right now we put it in the same spot. Is that what you said?
Right. Yeah. Out of bounds plays go where it went out of bounds.
Yep. We'll get more into that as we get into this year. So that's just something to practice a little bit. Free throws, we can't forget about free. I know we're a couple minutes over, but I'll get through this pretty quick here. Free throws. It's important to notice that this is the table side. The table side on a free throw is the strong side. So the lead and the trail, and it's, basically position yourself on the table side. The center official is kind of like in a two-person game where the trail would be in a two-person game. You're kind of up there observing. The center has the red dots, the thrower, and the two opposite. So what? And the lead has the nearest and the three opposites. So keep the triangle intact, and the lead has, and I say 1 and 3. So the lead has 1 and 3. I actually say that in my head. I'll say I got 1 and 3, 1 and 3. And then the center has 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Trail has everybody else outside the arc. So and remember the closing down principle, that the try goes up, you can take a step toward, and just like in a two-person game, here's our counter and our chopper for the time. And here we go. There's the questions someone put up. Who's the best to handle substitutions during a dead ball situation? So let me put the poll back up. You guys tell me what you think. Who's the best to handle the subs? Opposite the table, official in the end line facing the table, official nearest to the table. What do you think? How do you do it? All right, 5 more seconds. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow, you guys were split on that a little bit. So, yeah, we talk about this in pregame. We talk about this in the official nearest to the table is going to handle the substitutions because you're right there. You turn around. So who's ever nearest to the table. Now, most likely it's the person who, if you're calling a foul and you're reporting a foul to the table, you're right there. You're going to stay table side going forward. You can wave those substitutions in after you're completed your reporting duties. Okay.
Billy, real quick, emphasize to the newer officials, when you did the free throw count with the center official, that official is not where a lot of veteran officials are standing. That official is closer than where you're going to see some of your veteran people staying back in the old days. I guess Al would know, back across the court and across the foul line. They can't see that 1 and 2 that you referred to unless they're up like that person is.
Yes, and that's a great point. Here's the trick. Here's the trick. See this little lane? There's a visual lane that goes straight through. You need to be able to see through. If you're back here, there's no way you can see through because there's a person in your way. You got to get in the slot here, this little slot between who's ever in the top lane space, top mark lane space, to see the top. You got to see the top mark lane space and the thrower. And if you position yourself to see these 3 things, you're in a good spot. That's exactly where you need to be. Perfect spot. Good point, Joe. Because you will see people thinking they're like back here. Not good. Not good. Okay. Last 2. I'll get through these real quick.
Billy, hold on.
Yeah.
You know what Joe said was so accurate. If you're going to be all the way back there, then I'll save the athletic director money and we'll just work 2-person. You're not even engaged in the game.
That's right.
You're just, if you're not going to be where Joe said and where you said, and you're going to be out here by half court, then I'll save the AD money. Pat'll save the AD money, and we'll just work 2-person.
Yep.
Thank you.
No, spot on, right? It's all about keeping that triangle tight.
Billy, before you jump forward, I wanted to ask a question on the subs. I know it came up this past weekend in the camp at the convention center. Was beckoning subs. Obviously, we talked about the official nearest the table is beckoning subs. But when you're in a transition situation where that official is moving to become the new lead, what we were told, I'm not sure if it's an NCAA women's mechanic versus a high school mechanic, and maybe Al or Dan or someone is that that nearest official would beckon the subs, but the control over the stoppage or indicating, hand up to indicating the stoppage of the clock would be transitioned over to the center opposite the table. I don't know if that's a high school mechanic versus an NCAA women's mechanic, or if anybody can comment on that. And it wasn't the beckoning, it was simply the transitioning of control of the ability to restart, to get to the restart or whatever that was going to be, would be transitioned over to the center across the court.
Well, I have an opinion, but Al, I'll defer to you guys on that. College.
I would just keep it with the nearest official to the table. I think you're just going to confuse everybody.
I like it.
Yeah, I think hey Billy,
mm-hmm.
This is John. I was told the same thing with some college officials as well in transition. I think the idea there is the trail's moving back. There may be players that are moving in transition already in anticipation the ball's going to be going the other way. So it's a dead ball officiating, I guess, way of handling that. So the C can then step into maybe center court, make sure that the count's correct with number of players and who comes on and off. Then the trail still has eyes on that new group of players that are now at the other end of the court.
Yeah, and John, you make a great point there, and is what Matt brought that, Hooper brought that up. But thank you. I think you're probably talking about a little bit of more of an advanced technique, which is a good thing. Like if you can grasp that and your crew can do that, that's wonderful. I think what Al is probably alluding to is like if you're learning, if you're bringing the substitutes on, you got control. It's your world. Now, if you want to pass that control and say, Barry, take it, or somebody else take it, like whoever opposite the court, center take it, whoever, then you need to communicate that, right? So good point. I think that's all good advanced mechanics.
Minor thing, Billy, too, is everybody in the call have substitution awareness. And this goes with game feel. And when they're going to substitute and when they're not. And if someone doesn't get it, make sure somebody gets it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have awareness of what's going on.
Yep. Okay. So I got a couple little ones for you. Last one that's big is under pressure. How do we handle the press and transitions? Talking about transitions here, right? So press coverage, this could happen and most likely will happen in the game, right? If you have press coverage, we want to make sure that the center is not all the way down here where there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening down here. It kind of makes sense to keep this triangle intact and it all goes up together. And that when we always say if there's 4 or more people in the backcourt in competitive situation, competitive matchup, engaged matchup, here you got 6. The center official should be back. If it's just the ball handler and a defender and all these folks are down here, they're all setting up their offense and defense, then that trail can certainly bring that one matchup up the court. No biggie. That happens all the time, right? But once you have that second set of people or third set of people, 4 more people in the backcourt, center should be back here helping. And since we don't have like painted lines on the ground here like we do in the front court on that card that you all can study, we just think that the center official helps out in just wide eyes, just look across the court and pick up everything, especially that first pass. That first pass that comes out and there's a foul or travel, like you can have that because the trail's back here watching the throw in, maybe watching the something back here, right? So you're here to help. Notice the lead is, we said before, is boxing in the play doesn't have to go down all the way to the end line, can be here. And as the play transitions down, then, and if these players clear out, center can go down. These players stay, center stays. 4 or more in the backcourt, center stays. 2 in the backcourt, center goes. Easy enough. Okay, so there we go. Trail, dribbler, and defender. Center helps in the backcourt with 2+ matchups, and boxing principle. Okay, so what is meant, here's the last, I think this is our last quiz question, all right? Last quiz question. What is meant by a lazy C? What does that mean? Whoops, sorry. Go back. What's meant by lazy C? Does that mean the crew's not hustling enough? Does that mean the center official should delay to make sure there's no press before moving down court? Or does that mean the rotations are looking more like a C versus a triangle? What does lazy C regard? Weigh in on that. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I think most of you got it. Most of you got it. Yeah, so lazy C is what we say. It's kind of a slang term to say, look, the C doesn't have to be in a rush. Be a little lazy after a made basket so that you look to see, the C should determine and say, hey, wait a minute, the ball just went in. I'm going to be lazy and hang out down here until I determine what's happening back here. If all these guys are heading down, off I go. But I'm going to be lazy because I don't want to be like rushing down here and have to run back, like be so anxious to get down into my position. Be kind of a more of a slow to get into your position after a made basket, or sometimes a turnover. It could be a turnover where they're putting a press on, especially late in the game. They're going to put full court pressure on, and you're going to stay up there and help out. That's what's meant by lazy C, is making sure there's no press before moving down court. Okay? Good stuff. All right, last thing, ending it right here. 1 more minute, and I'll let you go. Intangibles, right? So the intangibles are this. Communication. You got 3 sets of eyes out there. There's a higher probability that something could go wrong because you have more moving parts. So you got to communicate as a crew. Referee the game. When you're new working a camp, don't worry about your position as much. Just know that there's a game going on. You do have to officiate the game. So don't forget, like there's kids running around out there, and just because you're like, oh my gosh, was I in the right spot? And there's like a crash right in front of you and you don't blow your whistle. Well, that won't look as good as, hey, you were out of position, but at least you made the call, because you're learning. And it's okay to be out of position while you're learning. Okay. Again, we talked about it earlier. Rotate more often than not. I would say in your pregame, rotate a lot. Now, if they're in a zone, which I doubt they do in typical summer leagues, they don't. They like to play man-to-man because they're trying to get the kids to work out. So if they're in a man-to-man, you are definitely rotating. If they're in a zone, sometimes you can kind of be a little patient until you see the ball get into one side, or you see where they're setting up, see what the competitive matchups are. But I would say if you're rotating a lot and the leads going back and forth, the center and the trailer going up and down, that's actually a really cool thing. And you get used to that feeling. It feels better when you're in kind of like more of a high pressure situation. And I'll leave you with this. Look, enjoy the journey. Like this is a fun thing. You're learning 3-person. Rome wasn't built in a day. Like you're not going to learn this. I couldn't go over everything about 3-person. We did a lot tonight. Like I put a lot out there. You got to pick up the manual, right? And look at the book.
I'll take another helping.
Yeah. And go through it. Right. And I think you guys will do great. What I will ask you is in the chat window, look at your notes right now. Take a look before you hang up, right? Tell me the 3 things you're going to work on. And like, we'll share that with the observers, and you should share that. Have them ready when you go to the next, to Saturday. If you're working the clinic at the camp, share that with you. Say, hey, I want to work on rotations. Would you keep an eye on me? I want to work on, make sure that I'm under my 28-foot mark as a trail. I want to work on blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is that you might have learned tonight that maybe you weren't aware of, Pop that in the chat window right now and let us know, because I'd love to see that. I'll get that transcript. And all I'm going to say to you all is, listen, first of all, thank you, Barry, Amanda, Dan, Jeff, Pat, Al. Who'd I miss? Barry, I think I got everybody. Everybody that participated. Abby, you guys are awesome. Everyone that had great questions. Look, this is meant to be a fun time. These clinics and camps are amazing for you to learn, ask a lot of questions. I will say, when someone comes up to you and gives you some input, don't ever say, yeah, but.